and welcome to another episode of the CollabTalk Podcast, where we discuss the convergence of technology, business productivity, and collaboration culture. My guest today is a good friend, Sherry Oswald, who's a Microsoft MVP, a Microsoft Certified Trainer, or MCT, and the owner of Power Up Learning. Hello, Sherry.
Hi, how are you today?
I was doing well. Oh, pretend like we were just talking on another call. You know, we're on calls together a couple times every week, but
yeah.
But this is a topic. I mean, I when I think of productivity, there's two people I think of. I think of Tom Duff because he and I do a lot of productivity tips. We do sessions together around that. And then I think of Sherry because Sherry, you do a ton of stuff around workplace productivity. Maybe you give more of a background of yourself, you know, who you are, talk about your company a little bit.
All right. So I am a MVP, but MCT, but I actually started out in human resources, and it's because I've always been people first. So whenever I approach things, I always look at it like, what is the business solution? What we have business challenges. Well, how are we going to solve those challenges? Not just the tech, you know, what's the best tool for the job? And so making things be people first and usable. And so at Power Up Learning, we specialize in change management and adoption because I want people to be smarter and more productive in their job and feel empowered. My tagline is, you know, I just train, empower people and make them be more comfortable and more effective in their job. I've laid a lot of people off in my HR career. It's like you've now laid off all these people and you expect all these other people to pick up the slack and they don't get replaced. And how do we make that better for them and get more done in the day? Because the one thing we don't get more of any time is time, right? That's the one thing we never get more of.
And I think that the broader look at productivity, that's what it's about. And it's not that we have, I even think of this in some of the discussions around like the future of AI and like robotics and things like that, that you're going to have AI and robots that are doing a lot of the work that we do. So we'd have leisure times. Like, no, that's not how it usually works. Like I want more time, not so that I have more time to do nothing or to do a leisurely life, to whatever. A week vacation, like going to Hawaii, which my wife absolutely loves, it drives me about the fourth day. I get anxious. Like I need to be back at work and doing some things. I'm already starting to think about what'll be the impact of me being gone.
All the hundreds of emails that come in your inbox.
Right. But that's what I think of productivity is it's really so the things that are time consuming, that are repeated tasks, let's automate that allows me then to go and get more done. So I think of productivity not as freeing up time for leisure, but in doing more with less. So instead of needing to hire two people with some automation, I can do both jobs with one person.
Yeah, and work smarter, not harder.
Right.
And I think you hit the nail on the head that it's the tedious, repetitive things that we need to, take off our plate. We were talking earlier in the AMAs about, somebody that needed to go in and convert a bunch of documents. That's a very tedious thing. They've got to do it one by one. Is there some way we can automate that so that that person doesn't have to go find, bring hundreds of documents open and convert them to PDF format? There's got to be.
In that case, it's like if whatever tool you're using, like, so in this case, using Outlook for email and Microsoft Word to create documents, is there a native feature that can go and create, like, generate PDFs of both emails and Word docs? It's like, yes, but one at a time. There's not out of the box a way to do that. So then it's the build versus buy. But the purpose is that, like, you realize that, hey, to do these hundreds of emails and Word documents, it's going to take me hours of tedious work to get that done. I can go hire a teenager to sit and do that for me. Or can I go buy a $30 tool online that'll do it in minutes? And then I have that tool for whenever I need that, I can go do it in batch. And so then I can spend my time, instead of sitting there saving down or printing the PDF of emails or converting Word docs, I can go do other more valuable work.
Absolutely. And everything's a trade-off of time or money. And, I know I make more than $30 an hour. So if it saves me 10 hours of work and I paid $200 for it, okay, fine with
Yeah.
me. That saved me the time and I have time to do other things.
I look at the same thing with when Microsoft released Copilot. I know it's comparable pricing for Google and other AI tools of $30 a user for a month, and you have to pay for it a year in advance. So you're basically, with tax, you're paying about $400 a year per user for having the AI capability built into, in this case, the Microsoft ecosystem, Microsoft 365. And for just like what you said, like, I know what my time is worth. I know what I charge per hour for the consulting work that I do. $30 is nothing for the value that I get to be able to go in and do a prompt. Like, one of my favorites, and it's a lot of people's favorites, but is like every Monday morning going in and says, tell me from all of my emails, my meetings and notes, recorded meetings, all of this data, what are my tasks, my actions, pulling in from Planner, from Project, other places within the Microsoft ecosystem. What are all of the things that I need to do this week? What are the asks for my time or my opinion or my decision? Outline them for me, and I'll go through that list. And every week, and be like, okay, hey, I'm on top of things, or oh, I forgot. There's usually always one or two things that I forgot. Like, I need to go add that in to my to-do list, my planner board, tracking these things.
Absolutely. And a case in point, I had a presentation that I had to do recently, and I didn't realize it till the day before. I had forgotten about it. It's one of those things with all the balls in the air that I was like, oh my gosh, I have a presentation tomorrow. And I had an outline of what I was going to create that from. And I had just gotten the Copilot license. And I said, okay, take my outline and create me a slide deck for this. And in like 3 minutes, it created me, I think, 80 slides or something like that. Do you know how long it would take me to create 80 slides? Cut and pasting them, and they're too wordy for me. I like more bullet points and graphics on my slides, but I could take all the content that they added to the slide, put it in the notes, and just change the graphics a little bit. That was worth $30. That was worth $300 for the whole year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that, I think, I did my first Copilot training last week with a client, and the purpose of that was for them to come in and explore what Copilot could do so they could go back to their leadership and justify why they should be able to use this tool. And, I think by the end of that 2.5 hours, they had some really good use cases of where that could streamline their job and make them more effective.
And I want to get into that and talk about some different scenarios, because I was thinking about this. I need to actually type this into my notes here for the summary, but there's been three major transformation events, things that have happened over the last decade. Sort of a little bit longer than that, but that have changed the way that organizations look at productivity. So you had the shift from on-prem to the cloud. That was a major shift. I mean, honestly, it's not like that was the last decade, because the whole SaaS application, that world opened up late 1990s. I joined a dedicated cloud offering. We created a collaboration and supply chain solution that was founded in 2000, latter half of 2000. I joined in early 2001, about 6-7 months after the company was founded. So that was my first experience working in a SaaS software, world, and trying to convince people to trust the cloud and to move their intellectual property out to the cloud. It's funny, I was interviewing last year Jeff Teeper, who's the president of Collaborative Apps and Solutions at Microsoft, and he said that, because we were talking about this move towards the cloud, and he says he feels like it wasn't until like 2016, 2017 where he felt that he finally saw the majority of companies accepting the cloud. So for me, joining the space in February of 2001, like, I agree with him that that minds had been changed around 2016, 2017. That's 15, 16 years of trying to convince people that the cloud is the way to go. But anyway, so that is the first thing. The second thing has been the advent of AI. That's transforming things. And then the third thing, it was the pandemic and hybrid work,
Right.
remote, but then hybrid work. Those three things have really changed for most people their perspectives on digital transformation, move to the cloud, automate through AI, and the fact that we can have and be successful with people working all over the place, not just from a location.
And the catalyst, I'd have to say a lot of that was the need to keep moving in COVID, in the pandemic, because I had a nonprofit that I work with that for 5 years they were saying we're moving to Microsoft 365, we're moving, but the leadership kept pushing back that our people can't handle that much change. Our people can't handle that much change. Well, guess what? Overnight they shut the building down and they had to keep going. Luckily, they'd already started to tiptoe into the cloud, but had they not at least been slightly prepared for that, the entire thing would have been shut down because everything was on prem. My office was right up from the server room with the blinky boxes in it. And if there's nobody there in the building to man those boxes, guess what? Yeah, anything, if you've ever worked in a company where the servers go down and everybody's crying in a puddle because they can't do anything, the cloud enables you to not be susceptible to that.
Yeah.
And being able to keep going in a pandemic when there's nobody in the building. Nobody, except maybe a security guard if they could show up.
Well, I think that's been because I worked in the data warehousing world. That was the first, the first decade of my experience was largely in that world. The second decade was largely in and building out SaaS applications. And since then, so I've been in tech for about 33 years. The third decade has been really around the remote and hybrid work. It's funny, is most of my career I've been helping to develop collaboration technology, certainly the last 15, 20 years. And yet most of the companies I worked for, including Microsoft, had no work from home policies throughout all of that.
Well,
and that's where the pandemic really changed how a lot of organizations realized, hey, we can do it this way.
Well, the ironic thing was, again, working for that nonprofit, I worked on-prem, but only part-time. And then I would get a little bit of backlash like, oh, yeah, Sherry's working from home today.
Working
from home today. And
or hardly working. Am I working hard or hardly working? Huh?
Luckily, the department, the executive assistant for the department, she's like, oh, no. When I ping Sherry on this at the time was Link. Okay. Then when I ping Sherry on Link, she's there. Like she's there working. I know she's there. But you go in the building and I would go to the restroom. And then on the way to the restroom, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Or get into this personal conversation. I got less done in that building because of all the quick questions that I got. I'm like, I was heading to the restroom for a reason.
Yeah.
Can we continue this in a few minutes? But my productivity went up because I could focus at home. But I agree that we still need that interpersonal interaction as well.
Which is the rise of why I've been since the late 90s, and really was that when it over the last 12 years or so really heated up around the social collaboration tools and technologies. I mean, you saw that with the advent of in the early 90s. The chat capabilities, and then by the end of that decade of the 90s into the web meetings and early 2000s, that really became kind of a standard thing using WebEx and eventually like GoToMeeting and Zoom eventually, and those kind of pieces. And Microsoft entered that space while they had web chat through MSN Messenger, and they had with Windows NT is where they started to really dominate with that, video via the chat tools. But then they went and bought one of the, like a WebEx competitor and that all got folded into what is now, and Communicator and Link and kind of all those brands into now replaced, and then Skype, and then is now all
Skype
part
for
of Teams.
business.
Right.
Yeah.
With all of that, it's been really cool to see that evolution around it. Why do you think there's so much focus now? It seems like it's really like there's more and more focus on productivity. Why is that important for both individuals as well as for teams, for organizations?
I think the main thing is the work ethic has changed a lot, in my opinion. People don't necessarily want to work as hard. They're finding that I grew up working really hard. I started working when I was 14 years old in a donut shop. And like my kids, I look at them, they really value work-life balance more, where they've always given me kind of a hard time about how hard I work because I work for myself. I'm like, well, because I do that, you get to do all these cool things, but those quality times are compartmentalized to the vacations or the activities or the weekends going skiing or whatever, where I think the workforce now, they're realizing that, your kids are only this big for so long.
Yeah.
And having those quality moments along the way every day instead of working so hard. So how do we do that? How do we fit all of that in? We have to be able to get more done in less time to free that up, and where you're not working 8, 10, 12 hours every day, and not spending time with your families. I think that's a big one.
Well, that's another reason why I often jokingly say that I said no one ever talks about the positive aspects of the pandemic. But one thing that came out, there's a few things that came out that were positive from that. One, I think just a lot more empathy for the real world of what's happening behind the scenes. Like if you have a conversation with somebody, during the pandemic, and there's kids running by and screaming and loud, and the person's embarrassed and apologizing and has to constantly mute and stuff. It's like I just look at those people. I had, my children were gone,
Thank God.
and so and I didn't experience any of that. It's like, but I have complete empathy for those people. Like, I've been there. I get it. It's like when it always amazes me that you get there's like a mom at the grocery store with this screaming baby, and people are like, oh, could you like shut that kid up, kind of thing. And I'm just thinking, the mom doesn't want to be here. Like, clearly she started the journey. She had to get to the store. The baby was probably asleep, now has been woken up, is hungry, needs to be changed, needs to go to sleep, whatever that thing is. How can you do anything but just like, I'm very much like come go to the front of the line. Like, look, don't worry about it. Like we get it. We've all been there in that situation. Right. So that's how I felt. That's what, happened during the pandemic, is people started to have empathy toward each other around that. The other thing that I saw, though, is that companies started to recognize, like, to your point of feel like you're always available, you're always online. Like, I tell my clients now, and I've had clients around the world. They're like, why am I still? In fact, I'm working with the team in India, and it was like 2 a.m, and I jump on the. She's like, I sent you this message. I said, yeah, I'm responding. Why don't we jump on a call? It's like, it's 2 a.m, your time. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm awake. Let's have the conversation. Don't worry about it. Like, if I were asleep, or if I were turning it off to go to sleep, like, I would not have responded to you right then. So right. Like, don't worry about my unhealthy work practices as a workaholic with an empty nester here. But
and I have the firefighter husband, so we've never had the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday lifestyle ever. Yeah. And often, I'd get the kids. I'd work during the day. They'd come home, we'd do homework and dinner, and then they'd go to bed, and I'd go back to work. So my day was always split. So I'm still a night owl. And like you, it's like, what are you doing up at 2 a.m.? I'm like, I can't go to sleep because this is how I work.
But I think companies have adjusted to that to recognize a couple things. One, that we as a company need to be more flexible about work arrangements and schedules and things. I mean, certainly you have to have like a team meeting. That means we all need to be online or in person at the same time. Even if you have a hybrid model, you say, okay, let's maximize the value of the 3 days a week when we're all in the office together. Like these are the days when we schedule the face-to-face meetings, and it's important that we're all there for that. Or this time is set aside for these meetings for people, online, whatever it is. But companies also started to recognize like, oh, I can see now that we are burning people out.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
the
Because they don't shut
problem,
it off. They can't just walk away, get in their car, drive home. I just shut the door. But then even last night, I didn't leave my office. And why did I do that to myself? It's like, get out of your office, Sherry, because it's just too easy to step across the hall when something is like, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. It's
well, with clients that I have now that are over in Germany and on the East Coast in the Boston area, and then partners that are in Central Time and Eastern Time, and then one, I feel bad for him in California on the West Coast, so I'm an hour ahead in the mountains, but the all different hours that are going on, but with that, recognizing, what am I asking somebody? Is this too late in the day? Is it going to fit with other people? Like all of that. I mean, we're much more considerate about those things. But my days are generally filled because I'm primarily on the early end, or I guess from their perspective in Germany and Boston, I'm waking up later. That I'm on calls usually from usually starting at 8, sometimes at 7, but at least till lunch, sometimes till afterwards, where I've not showered or eaten until 2 in the afternoon because I just like get up, clean myself up, go get caught up. Here's what this meeting is going to be about. I'm on the phone that entire time. Not to mention the poor dog that's waiting still to be fed in the morning, and it's already 2.
Or my brain break is my shower break. When I get up and start in the morning, it's like, all right, time to go get the brain break. And I get the best ideas when I'm taking a shower for some reason. I need like a dry erase marker or something for my shower wall because I have all these epiphanies while I'm in the shower.
But my point with all that is that like companies started to realize like, hey, we're doing this. We're asking too much sometimes. I mean, no one's asking me to like that schedule. I could just say no. I could block out the times, and I often do. My calendar, that I live and breathe by my calendar, and I block out time to get work done. So, but with all that,
the flip side of it though, like we are having a weird Albuquerque low that we don't normally get this time of the year. It's been snowing for 4 days here in Colorado, and I'm just sitting in here looking out the window, just forlorn because I can't stand it. But when my kids had snow days, I would have to take my days off work. So my vacation and my sick days were taken up because my kids had nowhere to go on a school day. There was a snow day. And a friend of mine posted on social media, she's like, my son has a snow day, but that's okay because I work from home and I don't have to waste my vacation days for this. How beautiful is that? Not to, now we still get to maintain those vacation days for the quality time instead of kids who have to. Yep. And in Colorado, we, sometimes we get a week with those kids that go to school. So if somebody's only got a week of vacation, guess what? That's it.
It's gone. Yeah. That's, I mean, that's another, evolution of, again, the flexible scheduling and things that are out there. What do you think? What are some misconceptions about productivity?
I think people, and this comes from the trainer in me, they don't realize how hard they're working, and they don't have to, just because of lack of knowledge of the tools that they're using. I often travel for my job, and I don't like mean to, but this person on the computer next to me is working, and I'm like, oh, do I tell them they're doing that the hard way? Do I hand them my card and say I can make that easier for you? And, people just even Microsoft people that I've worked with, they were like, here, let me send you all these documents. And they were hand copy and paste. I'm like, do you know you can do that in the minor attachment? And they're like, where have you been my whole life? I think people don't realize how hard they're working when they don't have to work that hard.
That's, one of my favorite things about presenting on productivity tips.
Yes.
For those that aren't available, so I've written a lot of articles. I don't do as many of them now, but I'm actually speaking in Las Vegas at the next Microsoft 365 event in May of 2025. I'll be doing my 20 of my favorite productivity tips. And what I love about doing those sessions is it might be like, here's some Outlook tips, and here's a SharePoint tip or a Teams tip, and here's one using OneNote, or here's something in PowerPoint. It's like all over the place from those things. And this happens every single time. There'll be people that you can see their faces like, I used to ask people to raise their hand, like, how many of you are aware of this? You see one thing, like most of the hands go up. But I'd always have a couple of the productivity tips. Like, did you know that there's this hidden feature that does this? Like, how many knew about that? No hands go up, or people are heads down, like taking notes. Like, what is that thing? Like, whoa. As I could go through 10 or 20 tips, and it's so satisfying as a presenter to have people coming up and saying, it's like, look, 5 or 6 of those, like, we've all heard of them. We're aware of them. That one that you gave, number 7, is going to change my life. Like, I waste so much time on that, and that is fantastic.
Well, I never miss you and Tom unless I'm competing against you in the time slot because of that. And I think I'm really good. I think I have a lot of really good tips and tricks, but you or Tom,
have something that's hidden. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's my favorite thing to do. And here's a little secret, Sharon, for Sherry, that some of the things, like if you've not seen it, so Tom Duff and I, we used to do webinars through CollabTalk as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's out on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look at Buckley Planet, search on at Buckley Planet, you'll find those. But I started to go and look at Tom's blog, be like, what do I think he's going to present on? And I'd always try to grab one or two of his. Well, it's not cheating.
It's research.
It's research. So don't tell Tom that I do that. So we're going to try and present a couple times this next year together, and do where we do kind of a battle, that battle format, which is always a lot of fun.
It's so fun.
But yeah, so let me ask you this. Here's an obvious question. We're talking about productivity. We are both really into productivity tips.
Can I give you my epitome one?
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, what are like 3 of your favorite productivity tips, no matter what the product, what the area is, that you just love sharing with people about?
So the first one that jumps into mind, I actually got picked to speak at a dev conference. Girl, don't code. I don't code. I don't like to code. I don't want to code. I can read code, tweak code, and implement code, but I don't like to code. And I got picked to speak, and I did my OneNote session, and I showed them window V, which is collect and paste. So when you press window V, it has to turn the pasteboard on. Then you can collect, instead of having to go copy, paste. You can copy, and then paste it, because it saves it on a pasteboard. And you can actually pin things on that pasteboard. So things that, like, people are like, what is your booking link? I have that pinned on my pasteboard, so I don't have to go look it up or remember it or whatever. And I had a dev stand up in front of the whole thing and say, you just made my whole conference. This was 10 minutes into the first session of the conference. Thank you. And then Tom Daly didn't know about that. So that when I just saw him in Boston, I shared that with him. I was like, wow,
Tom Daly is a friend of ours, fellow Microsoft MVP. Great guy, known him for many years, and helps organize the formerly SharePoint Saturday New York City. He's involved with a bunch of events and stuff now, though.
Well, and he's the coder behind CommunityDays.org. He's the one involved.
That's right. If you're not familiar with CommunityDays.org, and if you're interested in getting free training around a lot of productivity around all the Microsoft ecosystem, then go check out CommunityDays.org, which Microsoft hosts, but really Tom is like the man behind the curtain, keeping that thing up to date.
And coordinating the updates and the changes, and with contributions from other community members as well.
All right, so that's one. So the Windows V.
Probably the other is drag and drop in Outlook, because I think it's the best kept secret, but it doesn't work the same way in the new Outlook as it does in the old one. So I've got my feet stuck until they, that's the one feature I use all the time. So when you can drag and drop one item from an area of Outlook into another area of Outlook, it converts it to the destination folder type. So if you take an email, you drag it to a contact, it converts it to a contact. And then it leaves the body of the email in the contact. So you have context of how you met that person. And just like you, Christian, I meet people all the time. They send me emails like, a year later, I'm like, who's this guy? I don't know who this is, but I have the context of where I met them or what they're asking from me. And
I use it the most in just drag. Most people know about this, dragging. Again, it changed the way it does. It still works this way, but you have now a right side column to open up tasks in calendar, and you can drag an email. Because it used to be you just drag an email over to your calendar and it would then open up and you could schedule time for yourself to review whatever you're being asked to do in that email, and it would attach it as the supporting information. So now when you over on the right panel open it up and you can save it as a task, and then it will again have the supporting material, or drag it into the calendar option. And its default setting is whoever sent you the email to include them in the meeting invite. I wish it didn't do that, because I always add them to my calendar for me to do things, and I have to then, it's just one additional step to remove the person's name from that. But yeah, that drag and drop is hugely important.
Yeah, and the best kept secret. People are like, how long has that been there? I'm like, since like 2000, probably.
Yep.
Before that. I don't even know. I think I discovered it 24 years ago in 2000. And probably my other one that I use all the time is Alt Tab, because it lets me flip through all my open windows. And I don't know about you, but I'm a multitasker. I always have multiple windows open, and being able to flip through those windows and get to what I need instead of minimize, maximize, minimize, maximize. That takes a lot of time. So my thing is, if my hands are on the keyboard, I want to keep them on the keyboard. If my hands are on the mouse, I want on the mouse. I don't want to have to switch over. So another top secret key is the context key on the keyboard. It's usually on the right-hand side of your spacebar, looks like a piece of paper.
Yep.
And that's the same thing as a right click. So instead of having to grab my mouse and hit the right click button, I just press that. Whatever's selected, I get the context menu for.
See, I didn't even know I just looked down at my keyboard, but like, yeah, it's there. I don't think I've ever used that.
You see, I use something. Yeah. I love that. And again, you always teach me things. That's why I love our community so much, because we all know a lot of stuff. We all don't know everything everybody else knows, and being able to learn from each other is just invaluable.
Yeah, I'm going to have to, I'll see if Tom has written about that. Add that into the list against Tom.
So you may not publish this till after.
Yeah.
But it's on most standard keyboards. It is on my Surface keyboard. Looking at my Surface Pro, it's on there too. But some laptop keyboards may or may not have that button. But
I know that so much of the productivity discussion, first was like the air was being sucked out of the room around Power Platform, and really a lot of that Power Automate to go and to create workflows. And of course, workflows are not anything new. They've been around for a long time. But you see more and more people that are realizing, hey, I can, through Power Automate, through workflow, through Power Apps, I can do a lot. Now the air has been sucked out of the room yet again because of AI and Copilot specifically. When you think about where we're going with personal and team productivity, where should people go and focus? What do they need to be, like, both areas? And it's fine to say both, but like where do you think people need to be training themselves on and learning the most? Where should the focus be?
I think it just depends on your skill set. So the Power Platform and all the capabilities, Power Apps, is fabulous, but some people are still intimidated by Microsoft Word. I'm teaching a series of Microsoft Word right now. So we can't assume that people are going to adopt or use Power Apps. So if you're do tedious things and need automation around specific tasks that you can identify and push a button and it'll recreate those steps, or trigger something and it will just do things for you, that's great. But for the AI part of it, just talking to the class that I did last week, I was telling them that I tend to have very curt responses to emails. You ask me a question, I answer your question. And I've been kind of blasted for that a few times. Why are you so snippy? It's like, I answered your question. What do you want? And so be able to kind of expand and in a fun and friendly tone, add 20% to this or whatever, and be able to expand that email without me having to go, good morning, Bob. Nice to hope you're having a good day, whatever that person needs. That saves me a lot of time. Or just to get a starting point for a presentation or a document or a new session that I'm creating for presentations, whatever those are, just giving people a way to get started. I don't know about you, but I get writer's block. And I'm not good at blogging because I sit there and I'm like, I know what I want to say. Don't know where to start, but here's the bullet points I want to do. If I can get something at least going and build from that. But the caution is that you still need to put you into it. You can't depend on AI to do the job for you.
I just did a session last night for the New Hampshire user group.
Cool.
And my session, what did I call this thing? So I'm so terrible with the names of this, but it was the
How did I miss that?
the art and and science of creating content with AI or something like that. Anyway, I remember how I worded it. It was better than that. But anyway, but was walking through talking about that. I mean, that's why I make this statement all the time. You've heard me say this, is like, I think that Microsoft's branding and this for this space was so brilliant of calling it Copilot. It's not the pilot, it's the Copilot.
Right.
It is an assistant. It is there to help you, not replace you. And so with writing like that specifically, because I write a bit.
Just a little bit.
My primary contribution type, with video being second.
Right.
But interview style videos and AMAs, that kind of stuff. But it for getting unblocking you, getting you up and going. I mean, it's fantastic for that. But you have to be careful to know its limits, know how to leverage it, and to question everything that it produces.
Yes.
So you need to validate everything. But yeah, there's I mean, this. I mean, Sharon Weaver and I are writing a book, and we're combining. We have a lot of written word. We have our abstract for each chapter. We have our all of our notes, our thoughts. We have other blog posts and articles and reference materials that we're dumping into it. Plus, we have our weekly webcast show, the transcript of which we're dumping in. So we're going to put all that content together, build our, using Copilot, build our chapter structure, and then we're going to have Copilot draw from all of that content for each chapter and format our content into a chapter under the structure that we provide. That will provide the template and all of the content, and it will then make it into that structure. And then we'll spend our time, adding on to it, expanding, editing, cleaning up. But it's going to do 60% of the work of pulling that all together, and structuring that content. It's a huge time saver.
Huge.
So it's a bit of an experiment in the way that we're doing it. We're going to refine the model around that. But just again, from a productivity standpoint, to go and take a look at something huge, complex, if you're writing a white paper, an ebook, or in our case, a full book, it's incredible the time savings, the organizational help that it can provide. You can get to the end of writing an entire book and say, you know what? I want to SEO optimize my book, all this content. And here are the keywords. Go and insert this keyword where appropriate into the entire body, and seconds later it's done.
If you've ever talked to somebody who's authored a book and we know a lot of them. In fact, before I got involved in the community, I used to I want the books with the yellow stripe on the bottom. I liked that brand of books, or the ones that had the red banner. Well, I now know those people that I used to read their books and religiously, and you talk to them, and they're like, it was a year of my life, of nonstop. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat. And they're like, it's not even worth the money in the end of it, what they made off of it, because by the time they were done, guess what? Everything they wrote about, some of it's going to be obsolete anyway. So it's a never ending thing. So to be able to get that out quickly like that and knock out 60%, hey, that's
So I've now
it.
co-authored 6 books, and 3 of them, I'd say 2.5. 2 of the books, I was the managing author. I was driving the entire process, doing the lion's share of the first pass of editing, pulling it all together. The 3rd book, we actually started, my co-author and I, that we had done the first 2 books together. For the 3rd book, we then pulled in a 3rd person. Because I'm just like, I can't. I need somebody that is experienced, and thankfully he was a subject matter expert and an editor, and so he had that skill set and took that on, and we split the book 3 ways. But
was it Eric? Was it Eric?
No. Those were back in the my rational software days. Okay. So the 3rd book, which was heavily had a lot of UML in there, and so it was Kendall Scott, who is an author and expert on UML and wrote a lot of the early UML books. If you don't know what UML, the Unified Modeling Language. So that Rational Software was acquired by IBM. So the same year that Rational acquired us, later that year, IBM acquired Rational. And so had a relationship with them for a while. So our first book was a self-publish, which got us the book deal. The 2nd book through Addison Wesley, and the 3rd book was through IBM Press, because they had acquired all the content and the rights and wanted to do it on an IBM label. But anyway, yeah, it's what I always say. The reason I brought this up when you mentioned the book writing, I said it's the most work you can do for the least amount of pay.
Exactly. Well, it's just editing, the back and forth with the editor alone. It's like, why are you screening what I'm saying? That's what I said. I don't want to rewrite that.
But I do look at that as like, that was the writing books was like going back to being paid minimum wage. It was not a lot of money, like for that time.
The slave labor working on the ranch when I was in high school, like you made $2.35 an hour or something. I don't remember.
The other thing I will tell people too that are thinking about author, and I'm not knocking going through some of the publishers, and Sharon and I were approached by a publisher, and we ended up turning them down, and we're going our own route with it. We're going to do on demand, print on demand through Amazon. Just because we're doing a lot of we wanted more control over our content. That was the issue. Yeah. But the book that I made the most money on was our first one with that self-pub. We printed 5,000. We sold 5,000.
Wow, that's great.
So we did really well. Yeah.
So when you're talking about productivity, right? That's
now my time is worth more. Like I wouldn't have. It's you got to find alternate methods of doing that and take longer to do it as well. But
yeah, so the scenario from my class last week that we solved was that they had 80-page documents that were environmental studies. I'm making numbers up. And they wanted a summary of that. They didn't want to have to sit there and read through 80 pages to include that in a potential proposal. That's a real world problem. Do I want to sit here and read 80 pages and discern and take notes out of that and try and translate into, or can I send a co-pilot in this case, it would be a SharePoint agent part of that, and say, can you give me the gist of what's going on in all these documents so that I can just do an executive summary in a proposal? Thank you. And not have to.
Sherry, I know you probably heard me say this. One of my favorite, I saw a little comic strip. It was just a 2-panel comic. And on one side, it had a person sitting in front of a computer, from the side, and their manager standing above them and says, AI is fantastic. I'm able to take these 3 bullet points and expand it into this narrative, this email that walks through in greater detail, expands it into this longer narrative as an email. And then on the other side, facing the same, inward, the opposite direction, person sitting in front of the keyboard, the manager standing beside and says, I love AI. It can take this long, complex narrative and summarize it into 3 simple bullets.
Right.
Like
And you can
that,
do both, which is good, right?
that's right.
But
Yeah. So should we just be selling for this book instead of, should we just take all the notes, all this stuff, or why are we writing a book? Should we just condense it and have AI generate, hey, here's the 3 things you need to know about each of the topics, each of the chapters? Like,
back
no,
back
people,
in my day, we called those the cliff notes.
yeah, the
Right?
Cliff Note version of it. It's like, no, that's because you want the storytelling. That's why you read the book, the longer book, and so anyway. But well, let me a couple questions here. The last category I want to talk to you about is more on the cultural side and organizational culture
Yeah.
around productivity. What are some of the challenges that you see that individuals and teams face with productivity, and what are they doing to overcome those challenges?
I think one of the biggest ones is trust. They don't trust. It depends on the generation, but something like AI, I Skynet is live, people. If you know what actual date Skynet went live, it actually is live by
It's
now.
already here.
It's
Yeah,
already here, right? Um,
it's
and
okay because we're all slowly dying from the inside anyway.
exactly.
Yeah,
But so Skynet, it's trust, not just trust in the tech, but trust in their security of things. So from the organizational perspective, and trust that the integrity of the company, and how they're releasing it. If you don't have change management, if you don't have training, that's how we generate trust. We empower them, we make them understand, and you do that through training and change management, which is where my passion lies. And that's why, because you have to start from the people. Culture comes from the top down largely, but you have to have people asking for that stuff, not forcing it down their throat, or saying this is a tech change and you have to. So what's every person you've ever told them you have to do something? You tell that to your little kid. What are they going to do? They're going to cross their arms and be cranky about it. So we don't, treat people as adults and make them ask for things, and bet in some cases you want them to beg for it. That way they'll use it. And because you just throw it at them, they don't trust you. They don't trust you.
what can you change from from an organizational level though to change the culture of the organization to look more at productivity? Because one of the things that there's a few different Buckleyisms that I throw out there that I repeat myself on things, but from a cultural standpoint, one of the things that I often talk about is that an organization that is good at change management, but at change. So looking for planning around adapting to taking action based on the change that's happening around them. Those companies that are strong at change management have a distinct competitive advantage over those that flail, that freak out, over change, that struggle with that. How do you what are your suggestions for an organization that wants to make a cultural change and focus more on productivity?
So I use the ADKAR method, and I do a lot of adoption and change management strategy and building. And if you were talking specifically about a product, communicate with them, let them know what's going on, make them aware, make them desire, make them knowledgeable, and follow the model to bring them in. And so one of my methodologies is wanting them to ask for it, to beg for it, is what's in it for them. So you have to talk to your organization and ask them, what are the challenges, and then build the solutions, your communications around those specific challenges. If you can make them understand what's in it for them, they are going to beg for it. And then you will get the change. And you'll get the adoption of that. So I have, like right now, I'm writing a series of adoption emails that go out around Copilot. What can Copilot do for you? Here's some scenarios around that. And it goes out in a 4-week cadence, one a week. Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? And then, by the end of it, hopefully they're like, oh, maybe only like you, out of those 20 tips, only number 7 changed that person's life. Well, out of 4 weeks of emails, if only one of those changes one thing, and all of those people, that they're like, oh, Copilot can help me, then you're going to get a buy-in. But if they don't ever understand, and you just say, here, use Copilot, there's a little icon up there, go click that and see what you can do. And then and help them to be more effective, like with understanding what prompts do and how that can change the result of it. But we can't just throw, like, Teams in the pandemic got lobbed over the fence because they're just trying to keep moving, and it never got adopted correctly. I'm still working 5 years later, still working with companies that aren't using Teams effectively, and they're having to revamp and re-architect because they were surviving and as far as a business, and that's understandable. But had they gone through the change management process, it would have definitely landed and been more effectively used, and therefore more productive, right? So,
Yep.
does that answer your question?
I think it does. I think look, every organization is different, and depending on their issues, obviously it might be, some larger, institutional issues that are keeping, differences in opinions of leadership in an organization that allow some organizations to really start focusing on improving productivity. I mean, I've run it across some senior leaders that are like, people are paid to do their jobs, that they treat employees like, I gave you a task, do the task. When you're done with it, come ask for the next task.
Right.
That does not describe most information workers. That's a disconnect. It's a real disconnect with some leadership styles, which might look like, I was surprised. My first visit to Japan, and working with high-tech manufacturing, the supply chain manufacturing space, went to some facilities that were outside of Tokyo and saw that, actually saw this in the Philippines as well, but saw some of the factories, and with, where it was the old style, where you had the long tables, and there were coders, engineers sitting shoulder to shoulder down these long tables, on both sides, facing each other, the monitors there. At the end of each line, looking down the line of both sides, was a line manager. That was their job, to basically watch and track the performance of the people that were facing each other and the people in front of them. At the end of,
you have a ruler? Do you want to smack their head?
I mean, this again, yeah, it was so. I was saying, it sounds funny. It's like so foreign to me. I was in a foreign country, over in Japan. But at the end of the line managers, there was a manager, like the GM, sitting in his office. So he had an actual window in an office, but he was looking straight down the line to the line managers, keeping them in line and monitoring their performance based on their teams. Like that structure, like, I was amazed to see that. Like, I had heard about it, I read about it in business school. I just didn't think in the early 2000s it still existed like that.
Yeah.
And so that was incredible to me. And then, going to and working with Hewlett Packard and Cadence Design System, and working with Lucent and Lucent Octel and Nortel and a bunch of other these Selectron, going down to Seagate factory. Seagate had offices down in San Jose, California. I think some offices, a team that was over on the Santa Cruz side of things. Anyway, but visiting these various locations, like Nortel, I used to go out to in the Raleigh-Durham area, up in Ottawa, down into the Alpharetta, Georgia area, visit their different facilities. And I really started to see how the level of flexibility, and HP was like this years ago, I actually worked with them for over a year over in Palo Alto, just right off of Sand Hill Road, where all the VCs were. Like, it was the old school HP at headquarters down in Palo Alto. But how dynamic it was, how flexible it was, how much trust those organizations put in their employees to, look, here's what you need to accomplish. Now go get it done. It was less top level oversight. Here's how you will do these things, and more like, here's the the output here. Like, figure out how to get this done with the people that you need to work with your team. It was much more flexible. Those organizations were very open to productivity discussions, unlike the strict lockdown. I mean, they're efficient from a manufacturing standpoint, and I don't know that I agree with what I saw over in Japan, and same thing down in the Philippines. Working with some of these tech companies that were treating it like an old school 40s, 50s manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
Rather than information workers.
Yeah, my HR experience was in 2 manufacturing companies, and just like you, they're here's your line. You here, I do my thing, and then I pass it on to you, and you had somebody standing at the end, making sure that everybody was working, and if somebody, God forbid, somebody had to take a break, a bathroom break or something, because now you're backlogging everything. It was I could never work in that environment ever.
Well, it's just, I think that the world has changed a lot. Like, I would be, again, astounded if here 25 years later, it still operated like that over there. I don't think you can. The nature of so much of the work has changed. It's so much more collaborative. And I think that's
you were talking about robotics too. You were talking about robotics as well as a potential, depending on the tasks, obviously.
Yeah. But but I think that it's more and more organizations are, as for their information workers, and that's really what we're talking about, and more the information workers side of things, recognizing that they need to incorporate, into the culture of the organization, a constant review of productivity. How do we improve? What else can we do to give people more balanced work-life balance, to not burn them out.
Right. And again, I was kind of circling back to the beginning, what we were talking about is that I think people are realizing that life goes by really fast. Those moments are fleeting, especially, my grandson is now almost 6 months old already. And I'm like, how did that happen? He just, and it flies by.
Yeah, it does. Hey, my grandkids, he's 5 already. I still have baby pictures. I still have like little versions of grandkids on my phones. Like, this one's 3 now, but
favorite little humans.
number 4. I mean, I've not even seen her in person. My wife was out there, but so we've got 2 boys, 2 girls, grandkids. So yeah, they grow so quick.
So do we work to live, or we live to work? If we're more productive, we can work to live.
Nobody on their deathbed is thinking, oh, I could have written one more blog post. I could have done that little bit more work. No, they're thinking about this other stuff. Right.
From those of us who are up till 2 a.m, writing blog posts and answering emails.
Well, I always looked at it as my job, and this is, I've got a slightly different outlook as a parent than a lot of people do, but my job is to make sure that my wife and my kids have everything that they need to be successful. And so what I work in my hobbies, the things that I enjoy doing, but it's all secondary to making sure that my family has what they need. And I know that's just a very different philosophy than a lot of people that I run into that are more worried about the fun that they're having and embracing everything about life. It's like, yeah, but for me, I'm very family centric and making sure that, I want my kids and my grandkids to have what I didn't have. Yep. And if I have the ability to go and do that for them, then I'm happy to go and do that. But so in the meantime, I can get a lot more done if I'm more productivity minded. Anyway.
And if people are in bed, so they're not bugging.
Right. Harassing me.
Yeah.
Dad, I'm hungry. Dad, I've fallen on a knife and I'm bleeding. Like all of the annoying things that kids come to you
I
with.
used to tell the kids, unless you're bleeding or dying,
Yeah.
I'm working right now. I am in the building. I'm in the
Yeah.
house, but I'm
here.
not
Yeah.
available.
Is this a real emergency? Yeah.
Well, my husband's always been the meat and potatoes, and I've always been the gravy. So the cool, fun stuff we got to do, but we've always had the basic needs covered. But if you want to play sports, if you want to go on vacation, then leave me alone. I got to work. But I do regret sometimes not spending more time. But I didn't miss any football games. I didn't miss any volleyball tournaments. We prioritized all of that. And, I think did I work hard? Yeah. Could I work smarter? Probably, because now that I'm a trainer, I know more stuff. But I definitely would not have worked as much, I think, if I'd been more productive.
Well, that's another just making a case for productivity and become more productive, and you have more flexibility in how you work and how long you work, and yeah,
and then have the husband that has the full-time job, so you
and there's that. So that's my I don't really for myself, I don't see my future retirement. Like my personality, like I just don't see that. I'm going to be working until I'm, die behind the wheel driving 80 miles an hour somewhere.
There you go. Well, my husband's grandfather, he got caught driving 90 something in a 55, and he was 90 years old. And when the cop pulled him over, he goes, "I think a man should at least be able to drive his age." And I'm like, "All right, Grandpa Joe."
Yeah, that's funny. I'll have to remember that for when I'm older. Yeah. Well, Sherry, I really appreciate your time coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. You know that. And
we'll be talking productivity, I know, and other conversations. So this is an ongoing topic.
And if Tom's not available, maybe you and I should do it.
I already told you. I sent you a message like a week ago saying we needed to get some webinars on the schedule. We just need to plan some things. So
okay, let's. Yeah. That gauntlet has been thrown. Right.
There you go.
I think you probably sent that while I was on one of my, travel's been crazy the last couple of weeks.
Probably. Yeah. So Sherry, well, thanks so much. Of course, we'll have all of Sherry's contact information in the blog post, and you can reach out to her out in YouTube as well. And on the podcast, you'll see various links. So please reach out if you have any training needs, especially around anything within the Microsoft ecosystem on the M365 side of things. So she's one of my go-to experts. So reach out.
I'm honored. Thanks so much.
Talk to you soon. You've been listening to the CollabTalk Podcast. New episodes are published weekly, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and most other podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.